Alrighty, welcome to another free agency live stream here as we patiently wait the Golden State Warriors doing something at all. I'm fairly confident that they've got something cooking behind the scenes, that Mike Dunleavy Jr., that Joe Lacob are doing something, but we still don't exactly know what it is yet. I'm going to get into a few names here. Al Horford, De'Anthony Melton, Bradley Beal, what it means for Jonathan Kuminga. We also had the final game of the California Classic a few hours ago where the Warriors went down 93-79 to the Miami Heat. But I'm going to put that on the back burner for a second. I'll speak here for another 5-10 minutes, and then I'll get into your guys' comments because I've got a few thoughts here, a couple of questions that I'm interested in hearing from you guys about. Let's start with Al Horford. Not too much of an update here. I think same old, what I've been saying over the last few days, which is that I think that there is a handshake agreement between Al Horford and the Golden State Warriors, but that we're just waiting for the Jonathan Kuminga situation to be resolved before that can become official. Brad Stevens, obviously Celtics GM, said earlier today that it was unlikely that Horford would return to Boston. So obviously that's good news from a Warriors standpoint. I still think Denver might be lurking around in a potential option for Al Horford, but obviously it seems like Valanciunas will be sticking around in Denver. So I think even if Denver have interest in still adding Horford, I think the idea of him going there as like a third stringer or battling with Valanciunas for backup minutes, I'm not sure he's going to want to love that necessarily. And then Monty Poole of NBC Sports Bay Area said earlier on radio that the idea of retirement for Al Horford is still a possibility. So could it just be the Warriors or retirement? At this point, I think we've got so accustomed to hearing Al Horford's name linked to the Warriors, and it feels like it's a fait accompli that will happen, that if it doesn't happen, whether it's through retirement or whether he goes to a rival team, it would be a bit of a disaster, particularly given what's left in terms of the free agency market for centers and the dire situation there, and probably would leave the Warriors needing to either go into the season starting Quinton Post or potentially look at the trade market. I don't know whether they renew interest in Vucevic in that scenario. I hope not. But it would be a pretty dire situation if the Warriors don't ultimately land Al Horford here, which, I mean, they desperately need him. You look at a guy like, and I'm not saying he's a starting caliber center, but a guy like Kelly Olynyk is a guy that he or the Warriors had interest in previously for quite a long period, dating back to the 2024 midseason deadline. There was many reports that the Warriors and Jazz had chats then about a potential Olynyk trade to the Warriors. He got moved then to the Raptors, and then this trade deadline just gone. He got moved to the Pelicans, and then he played okay for the Pelicans, and he got dealt in the Jordan Poole, CJ McCollum trade a couple of weeks ago to the Wizards, and now the Wizards have traded him to the San Antonio Spurs today. So now Kelly Olynyk's off the table as this potential veteran stretch five. So the options are thinning if the Warriors don't get Al Horford. De'Anthony Melton. This is one that's come up very prominently since last time I spoke, and I'm very, very happy about it. I said basically from the time, I know you guys can go back, I've said it for a while, essentially since he got traded, obviously on December 15 or whatever, once he was eligible for Dennis Schroeder, I said, man, it sucks. It absolutely sucks what happened with him. And if there's a way that the Warriors can get him back on minimum contract next season, that would be unbelievable. That would be great value because I know it was a short period of the franchise. He played 6 games. He played 2 games as a starter. But man, we saw how good a fit that was. And I would love to have De'Anthony Melton back on the Warriors. Yes, it's a risk with his ACL injury. And coming off that, and even the year before that, he played 38 games for Philly due to back issues. But we're talking about a minimum contract here. The risks are pretty mitigated in that scenario, and you've got a situation where you've got a potential starter level player on a minimum contract. I think that would be an absolute steal. So it first kind of floated and came up through a couple of Lakers insiders yesterday. I know Joe Van Buha was one of those who was talking on his podcast or live stream or whatever that the Lakers had kind of the interest there had turned away a little bit, maybe more so from the Melton side, and that the Warriors were more of a strong option there. And then I think really significantly, we had Mark Stein earlier today quote, "The Warriors have emerged as a strong contender to bring back De'Anthony Melton in free agency," league sources tell the Stein line, in addition to Golden State's well-chronicled interest in signing Al Horford. So Melton on a minimum, which it would have to be. Like, if the Warriors do something with Kuminga here, then give the non-taxpayer mid-level exception to Al Horford, then basically they're left with minimum contracts. So Melton on minimum, sign me up. I think that would be an absolutely fantastic deal for both parties, because I think Melton could also look at the Warriors and say, yep, I know I fit that franchise. I was playing good basketball. This is another opportunity for me to rehabilitate my value and try and get a bigger deal next offseason. The Warrior the two guard spot right now is up in the air. I think a lot of people, a lot of fans from what I see on social media don't want Pods as the starting two guard heading into next season. I think ideally I might be in the same boat, but I'm not off Pods, I think, like a lot of fans are, which I think is a little bit weird. But anyway, talking of the two guard spot, Bradley Beal is another one that has come up in relation to the Warriors. Obviously, we're expecting a buyout situation to be finalized there in the coming days with the Phoenix Suns. Again, Bradley Beal on a cheap contract. You can sign me up to that. Absolutely. I think it was Fred Katz of The Athletic first linked Beal to the Warriors yesterday. And then interesting little piece here from Jake Fisher, who he and Mark Stein had a piece yesterday as well, which didn't have the Warriors as part of the Beal conversation. But then Jake Fisher tweeted out earlier today, quote, "Yesterday we reported that the Clippers, Lakers, Bucks, and Wolves were confirmed suitors for Bradley Beal, and I'm told that the Warriors also should be added to the list." So the interesting thing to me here in all of this, and we'll get into the Kuminga situation, is that there are a bunch of guards and like a lot of high caliber guards left in free agency that could be had on really, really cheap contracts. We're talking about Melton. We're talking about Bradley Beal. We're talking about Damian Lillard. Even a guy like, I like Malcolm Brogdon if he can get fit. And now all of these guys have got injury worries, right? Maybe Beal's got his own injury worries throughout his career, and he's probably the safest in terms of injury risk right now, which is saying a lot. So with the Kuminga situation, the last thing I want to do now is I don't want to trade Kuminga for a guard, because I'm looking at this free agency market for guards and I'm thinking you can just get a cheap guard here. You can get at least one, if not two, of Melton, Beal, Lillard, Brogdon. Like, there are a bunch of guys here. And so do I want to trade Kuminga for Malik Monk and pay Malik Monk $18 to $20 million? No, I absolutely do not want to do that whatsoever. I'm even cooling on the idea, and I was big on this, Kobe White. Like, would you trade Kuminga for Kobe White? In a vacuum, yes. But then I'm looking at this free agency market. I'm thinking, wouldn't I just rather like Melton and Beal, or Melton and Dame kind of thing? I know Melton and Dame together, that's a really big injury risk for both players. So that might be a question mark. But there's just a lot of cheap guys here, I think, that you'll be able to get without having to trade Kuminga for a guy making more than $10 million. And the other thing is, like, if you do that, now you've kind of got, and you sign Melton, now you kind of got this glut of guards. And in my opinion, if you're going to trade Kuminga, you got to get a similar type 3-4. Ideally, he'd be athletic, but at least a guy that can play at the 3 and the 4 for you. Otherwise, again, the Warriors could end up with a glut of guards here. Steve Kerr would be loving life, thinking I can play these 3 or 4 guard lineups now. But I think from a fan perspective, it'd be a little bit frustrating having this glut of guards and not a whole heap of forward options. Really, when you're looking at like Draymond, I suppose Moses can play at the 3. Jimmy, obviously. Guy Santos, but do we really want Guy start next season, really in the rotation? I don't know. Are they gonna play some double big like Al Horford at the 4, Quentin Post at the 5, maybe if Horford comes on board? I don't know. I think the Warriors still, and I'd even look at getting another, even if they retain Kuminga, which I think at this point is growing in likelihood. Slater said on radio in Sacramento yesterday that there's probably a strong likelihood that Kuminga and the Warriors eventually find common ground here on a new deal, just based on how complicated this situation is. The question I want to ask you guys, let me know in the chat here, because someone asked me yesterday, can the Warriors just rescind the qualifying offer or just let Kuminga go and get no salary back in a trade and then potentially open up room to do something? And I said, well, they can. They could let Kuminga walk, right? They can either not match an offer or they could rescind the qualifying offer and let him be an unrestricted free agent. Or, maybe there's a sign and trade with the Jazz, and the Jazz have now got cap room after their trade of John Collins yesterday. Maybe, the Jazz just give them a protected future first round pick and the Warriors take no actual players back in the trade. That would then allow them to open up the full mid-level exception. Now, in that scenario, I think it'd be a good chance of getting Beal because there's not many of these contending teams that have access to that. And so I think Beal is headed for the Clippers. I think absolutely that Bradley Beal is headed for the Clippers. But if the Warriors suddenly opened up the MLE and said to Bradley Beal, we can offer you $14.1 million rather than the Clippers offering 5 or whatever it is, then I think his head might be swayed by that. So my question is to you guys, would you let Kuminga go for nothing in order to open up the MLE if it meant getting Bradley Beal? So it's like saying, would you trade Kuminga for Bradley Beal, basically? And you're getting Bradley Beal at $14.1 million. I don't know. It's a really interesting one. The funny thing to me is, like, imagine if there was a world in which you could get either Dame or Bradley Beal. And I'm talking more so Beal because he's not under an injury cloud at the moment. He's going to be ready to go from the start of next season. How does Kuminga suddenly fit if you bring back Kuminga as well? Because there is a world where the Warriors, I suppose, maybe it's a bit of a dreamland, but there's a world in which they can have Kuminga and they can bring in Bradley Beal. But Beal comes in as like your third scorer. If Kuminga is relegated to being your fourth scorer, how does that possibly work, right? I don't know. The last thing I want to say here on the Kuminga situation, I was just listening to is it the Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini, and he was mentioning, and his co-host on there, which I forget his name, apologies, but they were saying that the Keegan Murray fit in Sacramento right now, and Vecini basically said, like, if you're Murray and his representation, would you be happy with where you're at? Now, he's a restricted free agent. They have the right to match whatever offer comes next year. But if you're Keegan Murray, are you thrilled with the situation you're in where you're basically getting no shots? Because DeRozan's a score-first guy. LaVine's a score-first guy. Sabonis, I guess, a little bit of a playmaker, yes, but also likes to get his 20 points a game. And then you could bring in Schroeder, who I think Schroeder's more of a score-first guy as well, even though he can play make a little bit, obviously. But are you going to be happy if you're Keegan Murray in that situation? Don't know. So I'm thinking here, because my ideal trade is still Kuminga for Keegan Murray. And I wonder what the Warriors have to do picks-wise to land Keegan Murray. Because I think my dream situation right now would be bring in Murray for Kuminga and then also bring in Melton, Beal, Horford. Like, imagine if you could, one of Beal or Lillard, bring in Al Horford. I think I'd still look at another 4-5, maybe like a Chris Boucher possibly, or a Trey Lyles maybe as a stretch forward. I wonder if there's an avenue, if there's a path, and this is a bit of tampering going on, don't get me wrong. But could you go to Keegan, if you Mike Dunleavy, could you go to Keegan Murray's management and just put a word in and say, hey, is he completely happy with where he's at in Sacramento? We've obviously got this Kuminga thing going on. If they bring in Kuminga and keep Murray, then all of a sudden it's like DeRozan, LaVine, Kuminga, Schroeder, all score-first guys. Sabonis likes to get his 15, 20 points a game. Malik Monk as well. He's a scorer. Like, is Keegan Murray going to get any shots? Is that a way where you can kind of sneakily get into the conversation and say, hey, can we make something happen here? Because on the Warriors, right, Keegan Murray will get looks. Draymond's a passer. Steph's gravity. Jimmy's a pass-first guy. We saw that. He was a pass-first guy to a fault, and we got incredibly frustrated with it over the final months of the season at points. So I don't know. That's the way I would try and work this Kuminga King situation. And again, I know it's tampering. I'm not sure if it's even legal for a GM to go to an opposing team's or an opposing player's representation and just ask the question. But it might be illegal, but let's be honest, it would happen all the time. So I think you'd be fine. But I don't know. That's just the way I'd get into it. Before I get into your comments here, guys, I'm sorry, I'll get to it quickly. Just in terms of the Summer League today, uh, not a great game to watch if you're an Australian watching that game, because I was super excited to see Taran Armstrong, and then obviously the debut in a Warrior uniform of Alex Toohey as well. And it was a disaster. It was not good. I thought Toohey was reasonable early, kind of showcased, like he's intriguing. You can see why the Warriors are intrigued by him. Kind of 6'9", 6'10", bigger guy, but can handle the ball, has some versatility on defense, had 4.3 rebounds in the first quarter, made all 4 of his free throws. But then from that point, it was tough, and tough on both ends of the floor, it must be said. Finally got his first layup in like the final 3 minutes of the game, finished with 6.6 rebounds in 24 minutes. Most concerning, he had 4 turnovers in the game. And then also was a game worse, minus 34 in a game the Warriors lost by 14. Armstrong was a minus 33, 5.7 assists. I think he was 2 of 7 shooting. Look, he's, again, 7 assists, 2 turnovers. He is fantastic at looking after the ball and not making mistakes, and obviously can set the table for others, as I spoke about the other day. But to become an NBA player, he's going to have to become some kind of scoring threat. And he made a confident-looking 3 in the first quarter, which was nice to see. But aside from that, like, he's got 12 points through 2 games. I know it's not what he does. Like, he's a pass-first guy. But to really make it, he's going to have some scoring ability. And I would like to see more of that moving forward. Because, yes, the assists to turnover stuff is fantastic and he doesn't make mistakes, but you need a little bit of juice creating your own shot. And I'm going to be interested to see if that can come with him. And then in terms of Toohey, just quickly to finish up on him, I think the biggest adjustment here for these international guys, whether they come from here in Australia or whether they're from Europe or whatever, is just the speed of the game and things quickening up when you're playing against better athletes. Because I think that's usually the biggest difference is you go over to America and the athleticism is just so much better than what you face either in Australia or Europe or wherever else around the world. And we know the best guys like Luka and Jokic, for example, to go to the top 2, like, they dictate the pace of the game. They slow down the game to their pace and how they want it, as opposed to trying to necessarily fit in to the speed of the game. And that's going to be the question mark with Alex Toohey, because I think there were some times where he looked a little bit rushed today. And again, the change in athleticism might take a little bit for him to become accustomed to. Last thing as well, Will Richard, I'll mention him, had another 12 points, just 6 of 15 shooting. He's only 2 of 11 from 3-point range now over his first 2 games. But you know what? I like him. He's 6'4", but he looks bigger than 6'4" to me, both in his body frame and also the wingspan as well. I think he's got a 6'10" wingspan. So defensively should be able to hold up. Offensively, obviously want to see the shot come around a bit more than what we've seen over the first couple of games. I think, what was he, 36% in college last season. Doesn't mind attacking the rim though, and getting to the paint. So that's good to see. So I think of the 3 of those guys, which I think were the 3 biggest guys we're looking at heading into Summer League through the California Classic, I think Will Richard's certainly the one to be most impressed by so far. But now we've got a whole Vegas stint to come starting on Friday against the Portland Trail Blazers. So looking forward to that. All right, 19 minutes through, and I'll finally get to your comments. Apologies, guys. Just Blow says, if we don't manage to get Horford, that's a crushing blow, and we'd have to trade mid-season for sure. We'd have to try and find a trade now. Like, I just don't think you can go into next season with Quinton Post as your starting center. I just don't think that's really a good option for a team that's looking to contend, not just to make the playoffs, but ultimately like win a championship still with Steph and Jimmy and Dre. No Cap says if the Warriors have to bring JK back, Gee has to go. Melton and Horford isn't enough. Still too many kids. Need to give Chris Boucher or Trey Lyles or Amir Coffey his spot if JK comes back. I think there's still enough room. Like, you got to think the Warriors have 9 guys contracted, right? And that includes TJD and Guy Santos. So there's 5 moves to be made here. And I outlined it on Twitter earlier. JK coming back, or in an ideal world, you flip JK for Keegan Murray or some other kind of 3 or 4 that's either a high-level athlete or high-level shooter. Again, I'm not sure who else that could possibly be of teams that are interested in Kuminga. I saw the Jazz came up as a potential option yesterday, obviously after the trade, and Taylor Hendricks came up. That's just another version of Kuminga, a young guy who's an athlete who probably won't fit. So, and he's not going to help you straight away. So what does that do for you? Probably not much. So it's either Kuminga or Keegan Murray or something like that. But most likely at this stage, you'd think bring back Kuminga. So that's 10. Horford's 11. Melton's 12. And then that leaves 2 more spots. Now, obviously, one of these, like, does Richard get a chance on a main contract on the main roster? Possibly, because that obviously saves the Warriors a little bit of money with those late second round picks and the cheaper contracts. I think ideally he's probably on a 2-way, and you use those last two roster spots on one of Lillard or Beal and one of Boucher or Trey Lyles or Amir Coffey, someone like that. That would be, or hell, you know what I'm trying to talk myself into now, because we've got Toohey and Taran Armstrong and I'm watching these Australian guys play. I'm like, why don't we just get Ben Simmons? Stuff it. Ben Simmons, why not? I'm semi-joking about that, but a lot of people think it's interesting and have proposed Simmons as a fit on the Warriors, which kind of makes sense given the ball movement style, given his ball handling, playmaking, high-level defense. Unfortunately, he just doesn't look at the rim anymore whatsoever. But he's, at the very least, he's a worse version of Draymond. And Draymond at 35 years old, if you want to manage him through the regular season, there might be worse options than Ben Simmons. Like, I'd prefer Simmons over Russell Westbrook by a country mile, just because of the size and the defense. Like, absolutely. So I don't know. We'll wait and see there. No Cap says, yeah, Melton should not get more than a minimum. No, he'll get the minimum, I would have thought, which is why if there was mutual interest there, then anyone who comes to the Warriors on a minimum contract, I don't think is really impacted by Kuminga at all. So there's a chance maybe that Melton is actually announced as a signing before the Kuminga thing happens. Because again, if you're on a minimum contract, the Kuminga thing shouldn't impact you unless it's coming down to like, what roster spots have we got available? Is there a chance we do a 2-for-1 trade where we bring 2 players in for Kuminga? Maybe that comes into it. But otherwise, like, I don't see why you couldn't just sign Melton now, because I don't think it would necessarily impact the Kuminga situation. No Cap says Beal is going to the Clippers. I think he is too, unless there's a way, again, and you guys might have answered this further on in the comments here, but unless there's a way where you just rescind Kuminga, well, there is a way where you can rescind Kuminga's qualifying offer. You can say, all right, you just walk to wherever you want. That's fine. We'll have the full MLE and we offer Beal $14.1 million, and he accepts that over the Clippers' offer of $5 million or whatever. The only way you would do that, and I'm not even sure I'd do it. I'd probably prefer keep Kuminga, trade him for something legitimate, which seems like they can't really get at the moment, and bring Dame in on a minimum, on a 2-year minimum, hopefully, if he would go for that. Because obviously you want Dame for the following season as well. You don't really just want him for the year because you don't know necessarily when he's coming back. That would be kind of I think I'd prefer that over Beal at 14.1. I don't know. It's a tough one. I could see the argument for it. And if you're going to do it, you'd have to get an absolute assurance beforehand from Beal and his management that, yes, you rescind the Kuminga qualifying offer. Well, you could just do it already. You could just say, all right, full MLE, and you could do it in one swoop and just say full MLE to Beal, and we've rescinded Kuminga's qualifying offer. Bang, done. Right? Would you do it though? Don't know. Just Below says Melton is good for this season, but Pods is good for the future. Yeah, fair. The Pods thing seems to get lost in all of these guard talks with Dame and Beal and Melton and stuff like that. I don't know. People want a significant upgrade from Pods, but I don't know. I like him. I think he's a really valuable player, young player. He's on a great contract. You wouldn't trade him. What I would say in this scenario is if it lined out or came to fruition, like I said before, where it's like you get Kuminga back, let's say that's most likely. Kuminga back, Melton, Horford, one of Dame or Beal, and one of Lyles or Boucher or whatever. You got 14 guys. Then all of a sudden, again, you got these guards in Beal or Dame and Melton, where all of a sudden I think Buddy Hield, as good as he was in Game 7, helped us get to the second round series, as good as his chemistry was with Jimmy Butler, and we saw all the off-court stuff there and the banter going on, Buddy Hield at $9 million. Again, it's just the market. It's like, why would I have Buddy Hield on $9 million when I could have another one of these, like when I could have Melton on $2 million? Now, again, I think if it was Melton and someone else, maybe if you got Melton and Beal, then I just don't think, like I legitimately don't think Buddy Hield's a need on this team anymore. And you'd go and try and move him, perhaps go and try and move Moses as well. You basically have $20 million there to go and make a trade again, whether that's for another guy, and it would most likely be for another guy in the front court, a 3, 4, 5. Maybe another shooting option in the front court, maybe another center option. And you could also, include TJD in that trade and get to like $22 million in outgoing salary. I don't know. There's flexibility there. And that's what I think, again, people are frustrated with the lack of movement. But I do think there's a plan in place for the Warriors here. And the plan looks okay to me so long as these free agents are still left on the board, so long as theoretically Dame, Beal, Melton, Horford are still available. Once those guys go and the Warriors haven't done anything, then I'll be really pissed because you're left with the scraps. You're left with nothing. So anyway, we'll wait and see. No Cap says, but Beal is going to the Clippers, mate. And Dame has been linked to the Celtics buyout. Guys don't want to come here. My ideal offseason if JK has to come back on qualifying offer, bring in Boucher, Melton, Horford, 3 vets. Gee should be waived. I don't think, Gee's not getting waived. He just had his contract guaranteed, I'm pretty sure, or the team option picked up. I will totally rescind the offer even if they don't get Beal. Beal is going to the Clippers. So who else is getting the MLE then? Because that's what you're saying is like, if you want to rescind the offer, then, okay, you open up the MLE. Who else would you give the MLE to that's left on the free agency market? Like, or would you try and get a bunch of different guys? Does it just mean you give like maybe a 2-year, $12 million deal to Dame and you give Horford $6 million? And I don't know. The Dame's been linked to the Celtics, but he's also been linked to the Warriors. I could see the Warriors getting Dame if they don't get Beal, which again, I agree with you. I think Beal is most likely to go to the Clippers, but again, I think he could be swayed if the Warriors suddenly said, yep, here's the full MLE. No Cap says, I like him here coffee over Melton. I don't trust he can be healthy. Yandel, I don't think is happy with that comment. And neither am I. De'Anthony Melton's better than Amir. I'm taking the risk on the Anthony Melton. Okay? I'm doing it. I just think he was such a man. It was good times. Good times when he was fit and healthy and available. And those 6 games, the Warriors were 4-2. His last 2 games, a big road win over the Thunder when he was a starter, then beating the Mavericks in Clay's homecoming. They were good times. And I'm confident. Like, guys return from these, and he's not old. He's like 27. It's not like this guy. It's not like Dame coming back from a torn Achilles at 35, which is a risk. But then again, it's also Damian Lillard, so you kind of take the risk on that. But he's 20. Like, Melton's 27. I'm doing that. I just love it. I think it's a great potential steal because, again, on the minimum, I just think the upside in Melton is way higher than Coffee. Like, there's a chance Coffee averages, if you brought him in, which I'm not totally against it, but there's a chance he's out of the rotation completely, or he's averaging like 10 minutes a game. Melton can be a legitimate 25-minute per game player for you once he's up and going. And then like a starting level 2 guard next to Steph and brings point of attack defense. Again, maybe that's a concern after the knee, but I think it's worth the risk. Gucci says, would you trade away JK for 2 first-round picks, no players, as in let JK sign with another team and Warriors get picks back? Yes, so long as you knew what you were doing with the money that you've kind of created out of that, then yes. But I think you would have I think you would have to get Beal. Like I think he's the guy that I'd be willing to spend like the full MLE on 14.1 because I think like for all the bad reputation that Beal or the bad press that Beal got in Phoenix and the disaster that was, which is legitimate, but he still averaged 17 points a game last season on 38.6% 3-point shooting and like 50% from the floor. And the year before he shot like 53% and 43% from three. Like super efficient numbers. Now the defense, yeah, sure, but the Warriors I still think can be a high level defense. They need offense. They ranked 16th below average in offense last season. You pair Beal with Steph and Jimmy, suddenly I think you're going to have a top 10 offense. And defensively, yeah, you might take a couple of steps back, but I think you can still be top 10 to 12, and therefore you can be a really good team. But I'm just not sure if I'm rescinding the qualifying offer on Kuminga, I'm not sure who else I'm giving that money to. I just don't think that there's any players out there that scream that's worth doing for me, aside from Beal. No Cap says Keegan would have to force his way in. Berserk Monk says Toohey definitely did not look good. I don't trust his ball handling. He looks like a raw version of Gee. I think it's as disappointing as it was, and trust me, it was disappointing. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's his first game. Like we gotta use the entire summer league to. I mean, I'm all here for immediate reaction and quick takes, but that's what we do. But at the end of the day, I also acknowledge that hey, let's give this guy the rest of summer league to see what he can do. Yandel says, why can't we get Kobe White and Patrick Williams for JK in a second? What do you think? Go Dub Nation, but I would love JK to stay. Patrick Williams, no thank you. That's one of the worst. I think the Bulls have been trying to trade Patrick Williams for a long time and they haven't found a suitor, and I think for good reason. That's a horrible deal. That can't work anyway. It's because, again, you got to think about Kuminga. Like, even if he got $28 million, that's essentially $14 million the Warriors can take back, plus 7.5 if they stay under the first apron. So maybe max 20, 21.5. Patrick Williams is on like 18 million a year and Kobe's on 12 or 11, 12. It's $30 million. So that can't happen. No Cap says absolutely not on Ben Simmons. It would be a controversial signing. There'd be a lot of interesting takes from Warrior fans if that were to go down. But I'll tell you what, there's three. It first came up, I wrote about it because Ben Steiner of Sports Illustrated just over a month ago mentioned Simmons as a fit for the Warriors. Monty Poole mentioned it just before free agency. And now Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report, he just had his top 25 the best landing spots for the top 25 free agents remaining. And he had the Warriors as Simmons' best landing spot. So that's three different publications now that have essentially said, and I'm kind of like against it, but the more that people float it and Pincus said, oh, could he just be a backup for Draymond? And I'm like, well, if it allows Draymond to rest a few more games during the regular season and average less minutes, then maybe that's like worth something. I don't know. Just Blow says, why do you think we sat Mobley? Yeah, he obviously impressed through the first two games. I think they're just, Taran Armstrong rested the other day. I think they've got these kind of rotations in order where there's 19 guys on the roster and they're just cycling through. Hopefully we see a heap more of Richard, Armstrong, and Toohey. They're the kind of three guys I really want to see, and it was good to see those three guys get out there together for the first time today. All the other guys, like Jackson Rowe, will continue to play a heap, I suppose. But a lot of these other guys, they're just cycling through them and just saying, well, we've got like 19 guys on the roster. Can't play everyone, but we also want to give people opportunities. So it's kind of what it is. But Joe Mike says Summer League Warriors looked really small, ironically, without Mobley. Well, he's not that tall either. He's like 6'8", 6'9". He's a bigger body. Yeah. No Cap says I would give only 10 at the mid-level and use 4 on like a Trey Lyles. I think Trey Lyles can be had at the minimum at this stage. Like a lot of these guys will be minimums. Beal only 10. Well, whatever he's willing to take. If it gets him away from the Clippers, whatever it will take. Sham says, I'll take Melton. Beal is a head case to me, and I don't want Dame to risk further injury. I think I'd be happy with I would be happy with and this sucks for Buddy Hield, but I would be happy, I think, with one of Dame or Beal and Melton, and then looking to see what you can get for Buddy Hield via trade, and potentially include Moses Moody as part of that. That's about $20 million. What can you get? Now, I suppose the question is, well, if you get Melton and Dame, well, Dame's definitely out until at least the All-Star break. And he'll be back after the All-Star break at the very earliest. And then with Melton, it's like he's coming off a torn ACL as well. Can you have both those guys? Maybe the Warriors kind of balk at that idea. And if they do, then they probably keep Buddy around just because Buddy plays. Buddy played every game last season. That guy plays. That's one of the most underrated things about him is he plays every game, doesn't miss. So maybe you'd keep him around in that situation. But if it was Beal and Melton, for example, then I could be like, yeah, Beal still has his injury issues, but he's not coming off a major long-term injury. So I could afford, I think, in that case, to see what I could get for Buddy Hield. But I'm happy with one of Beal or Dame on the roster, to be honest. I just think the upside is just way too high to not take a risk on those guys. Iran says Warriors already have enough guards. True, but I don't know. Again, if you have the ability to get Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal, and you have the ability to get a guy like De'Anthony Melton, who fits with the franchise, who's a potential starting caliber player on a minimum contract, it's hard to say no to that. It's hard to say no, which is again why, if you got two of those guys, Buddy Hield again could become a trade candidate. No Cap says Pods should be in Santa Cruz next season, just like they did with Poole. Pods wouldn't get any burn right now in OKC or the Pacers. That's just why the Pods hate. The dude has led the team in plus minus over the last 2 years. His first 2 years in the league. Did we not I know his playoffs were rough, but his second half of last season was fantastic, right? The three ball came along. He was over 40% from three over the second half of the season. The Pods hate to me is weird. I think it's just the way it's got nothing to do with his actual basketball ability. People get into Pods it's nothing to do with his basketball ability. It's to do with how he carries himself and this frustration of him, carrying himself like a star and tall poppy syndrome, I suppose. And Warrior fans trying to drag him back down and say, hang on a second. No, you're just a role player. You're not this untouchable asset. We could move you in a trade. It's got nothing, because on court, he had a really strong second half of the season. And he's a good young player. He's come on, he needs to be in Santa Cruz. Give me a spell. Seriously. Aaron says PJ, Steph, Brandon, SG, Buddy, Moses, Will, Richard. Well, yeah, but it sounds like we're getting Melton. So Yandel says Buddy Hield stays. Love him and Jimmy having fun. It's a good point. I mean, chemistry wise, it's obviously a good fit. One Sonic says trade Moody and TJD for Robert Williams. Would it take? Obviously, it would take Moody from a contract standpoint. I get that. I don't know. If you get in addition to Horford, and then have Horford post and Robert Williams. Yeah, so that's the kind of move. If they make all the moves that I'm suggesting here and then have 14 players, then I'm kind of for that kind of because you wouldn't have an athletic center aside from TJD. And if you don't think he's a rotation piece for you, but Robert Williams can, which I could understand that, then Moody and TJD for Robert Williams. Yeah, sure. I could see the Trailblazers going for that. So that's the kind of move I could make after you make all those other moves to ensure that, hey, we don't really need Moses here. He might not even be part of the rotation. We could potentially look at Buddy Hield deals. I get that. No Cap says I'd break the 14.1 MLE up into Boucher and Amir Coffey and Melton, then I'd use biannual 5.1 to sign Horford. You can, I legitimately, this is the problem, is I think these guys, Boucher, Amir Coffey, Melton, can all be had on minimum contracts. No one else has got any cap space. I just think you'd be overpaying for those guys. I think you can keep Kuminga or do something with Kuminga and get those guys. You don't have to give away Kuminga and open up more cap room and space for those for players who I think can be had for minimum contracts anyway. And then the Horford thing, well, if you keep Kuminga, you're most likely going to still have access to your non-taxpayer MLE, and he can be had for 5.7. Fine. The other thing to me is like this Horford thing. You don't want to ruin the Horford thing because he's a desperate need right now because there's not many stretch veteran centers. But what if Beal came to you and said, all right, match the Clippers, give me, well, in fact, I don't think the Clippers can give the full 5.7, can they? I think they can give partial. I don't know. They made a move today where they waived Jordan Miller or whatever, and it seems like they're going to get Beal. But what if Beal said, give me the full non-taxpayer MLE 5.7 and I'll come? Do you then go to Horford and say, look, we were going to give you the non-taxpayer mid-level, but we can actually, like Bradley Beal said, he'll come. Do you mind taking a minimum so we can get Beal? Does Horford say, no, piss off, I want it or I'm going elsewhere? Or does he say, oh, we can actually get Bradley Beal? That increases the team's chances next season. So yes, I'll take the minimum. Because that's the other way you could try and incentivize Beal and try and steal him away from the Clippers, maybe. One Sonic says Clippers have 40 million in cap space. Beal is gone. That's just not true. They do not have 40 million in cap space. I think they've got $8 million to spend with 3 roster spots or something like that. So, yeah. I think they can give Beal like 5. Yandel says, do you double dip at center for agency or trades even without Horford steal? I feel like, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't mind getting, like, could you move TJD and get an upgrade on a guy who, again, like that idea before with Robert Williams, I didn't hate, to be honest. So, yes, I think you could try and, like, you could upgrade. I'd be okay with Horford post and TJD, but you could also try and upgrade the TJD spot and say, can we get another athletic guy in that you've got Horford and post as shooters, so it doesn't have to be a shooter in that scenario, a stretch 5. Can you get an athletic guy who can catch lobs, rim protect a bit for you? Like, and maybe a guy like Robert Williams, who's a bit of an injury risk. He's on an expiring deal as well. Like, I don't hate that kind of option. The other one is, to me, is like, could you get a Chris Boucher? Because you look at, like, OKC this season played a heap of double big with Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. We saw the Rockets do it, obviously, with Şengün and Steven Adams. Now they're bringing in Capella as well. Could you say, all right, we've got Horford and Post as stretch 5s. Do we bring in Boucher as another one? And then we could have lineups where you could have 2 of Boucher, Horford, and Post together. Don't know, because that's kind of how it's like the Clippers have kind of doing that now, where they're going to have Zubac, Lopez, and John Collins. It's kind of double big lineups there. The Spurs have just got Cornet and Olynyk, and I think we'll probably see a heap of lineups they run where it's 2 of Wemby, Olynyk, and Cornet, like 2 of those guys together. Maybe the Warriors, just to open up some flexibility, should be looking at, okay, can we try and, when we need to match up with these double big lineups, can we do it without limiting our offense, which I think is what they were, doing a lot last season. Yandel says, De'Anthony Melton better not even close easily. Great defender. Coffee, good, but come on, you've seen Melton. Yeah. One song says they should get Chris Boucher on a minimum. Yeah, like I wouldn't hate him or Lyles for the last spot, maybe. I could see them also just giving that to like Will Richard as well or something. But No Cap says, or I'd use 14.1 MLA to sign Boucher, Melton, and Trey Lyles, give them all like 4 to 5 million with a player option next season, Horford on biannual. Again, like I'm just giving the minimum to those guys. Then you have Kyle Anderson TP for 8.8. One Sonic says Horford gets the MLE, everyone else would have to be minimum contracts. That's if they bring back Kuminga or they bring back kind of $10 to $15 million in salary for Kuminga. Gucci says with the picks, I'm thinking we maybe can package with Moody to try and get a big wing. Yep. Yeah, I can see it. A big wing or another, as was that you or someone else suggested before with the Robert Williams thing? One Sonic says that trade TPE would be nice if they used it. Yeah, it also hard caps them at the first apron, doesn't it? I think. So, and also any sign and trade with Kuminga has you at the first apron as well. So, Sham says, I'll take Ben Simmons as a vet minimum backup point guard. Well, he handles the ball, but he's actually, I mean, he'd kind of be he'd be a point center almost. Like he's playing for the Clippers as like the backup to Zubac, basically. But again, can kind of do this ball handling and playmaking stuff. Yeah, I mean, because of his size, you can kind of, it's weird. You can kind of play Ben Simmons in any spot. You can play him as a point guard. You can play him as a backup center, but then you just have to have specialized lineups around him as well. Like you just have to have 4 shooters, essentially. Draymond and him could never play together. So I don't even know if he'd love, like, because the Warriors would be saying, well, you could come here, but you're basically Draymond's backup. Draymond's still going to be playing like 30 minutes a game. That means max you're going to be playing 18 minutes max. Then if you bring Kuminga back, that complicates the front court spacing even more. Like, is it a great situation for Simmons? I don't know. What is a great situation for Ben Simmons? I don't know. One Sonic says better to resign Kuminga than trade at the deadline for full value. I think that's what they're going to do. I think that's the likely scenario. Gary says, do you think it was a mistake not getting Jock Landale after he was released from the Rockets? Yeah, good to see Jock getting picked back up and that he'll continue his NBA career. But I'm not devastated about it. I'm not staying up at night about the fact we didn't get Jock Landale. Josh says, no Ben Simmons. Anybody Ben Simmons, I'd rather have Ryan Rollins back. One Tony says, Horford would fit into the Warriors defense. I could see Jimmy Draymond and Horford taking over games defensively. Hopefully, it's old. It's an old trio, but certainly the IQ. And I think that's what, like, if you look at what the Warriors did defensively over the second half of the season, it was all an IQ thing because you're playing Draymond as your small ball 5. Like, when you've got no guys taller than 6'7", you shouldn't have an elite defense. But I think the Warriors system and their general, like, the veteran guys out there who just know, even Steph, like, he knows what he's doing on defense kind of thing. He's undersized, sure, he can get picked on, but he knows what he's doing on defense from a systematic perspective. He's got quick hands. Like, you have enough of these veteran guys. I mean, I'm looking at it again, not to talk about football too much, but I'm looking at my team, and it's funny how the Warriors are going to be super old now, one of the oldest teams or the oldest team in the league next season potentially. And my team, Collingwood in the AFL, we're easily the oldest team in the AFL. Like, we got a bunch of guys over 30 running around. And everyone kind of went into it thinking, they're going to be too old, too slow. We lost our first game of the season by 50 points. Everyone was like, these guys are cooked, too old, too slow. We've since come out and won 15 of our last 16 games and are well on top of the ladder, clearly. And everyone's saying now, like, yes, these guys might not even be what they were from a physical standpoint now, but the collective IQ and just everyone knowing the system, having been around for, 100, there's so many players out there that have played at least 100 games kind of thing, which is a lot in AFL football. And they just know what they're doing. And that's kind of the same thing with the Warriors, is you just have a bunch of these veteran guys with high IQs who just know what they're doing, right? And then that can make up for some of the size issues, the athleticism issues, coming up against these younger teams. One Sonic says Warriors had a top 3 defense after they got Butler. Yep. Yandel says Pods leads the league in charge. I like him a lot. Godzilla says, I think we should give Ben Simmons a chance. 6'9" point guard would help and can guard forwards. Yeah. the Simmons thing would be funny because, again, there's a lot of people I think that could see the idea of it, and then a lot of people would be like, hell no. And we've already seen that in the chat here. Josh says, sadly, Horford is debating retiring. Yeah, we had that reiterated by Monty Poole earlier. I'm still pretty optimistic, I think. Gucci says, would you consider Corey Kispert plus a first rounder for JK? That first rounder with Moody plus Hield for Trey Murphy. Is that enough? Gets close, yeah. Well, you'd have in terms of you'd have to send more picks. In terms of salary wise, it gets close. But in terms of picks, I'm assuming you'd have to send more than just that Wizards first rounder. If you have it lined up, if you said yes, like Trey Murphy's on his way here, then yes, I think you would do that, right? Just because it's basically saying Trey Murphy and Corey Kispert for Moody, Hield, Kuminga, and picks. I think you'd probably do that, yes. But I'm probably not doing the Kispert and first rounder for JK without having the Trey Murphy thing lined up, ready to go. No Cap says, I don't want JK back. It's going to be awkward. He doesn't want to be here and no one wants him back. That's a problem. If you look at all the options, the best is to rescind the offer. Again, it's kind of what I said the other day is like, even if the fit isn't there, even if he doesn't want to be here, like I'm not, giving him up for 10 cents on the dollar. Like I'm just not giving up an asset like that. And it could potentially blow back up in your face if he goes somewhere else and starts to dominate. So again, unless you're getting Bradley Beal with the full MLE, I just don't think there's anyone out there. Like all the guys you're mentioning, Coffee, Boucher, whatever else, Trey Lyles, like I think they can all be had for a minimum. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think they could just be had on minimum contracts, and I'm not sure they're that valuable enough that you'd be just willing to let JK walk. Josh Blow says Beal at the 6-man would give the needed scoring boost. Well, I think in order to bring Beal along, like whoever gets Beal is probably going to have to promise him a starting role. And that's what the Clippers are doing, I think, moving Norman Powell. And that's why they make the most sense. And that's why you think he's going to go to the Clippers. The Warriors could say, yep, we'll give you the starting shooting guard role as well. And Pods can go back to a 6-man role. I mean, that's plausible. There's not probably that opening like there is with the Clippers, but it's possible. So, one Sonic, Chris Boucher, 6'9", power forward who can shoot 38% from three. They can get him on the minimum. Yep, absolutely. No Cap says, I want Boucher over Melton. We need him. He can be a Wiggs replacement for cheap. Boucher is a Wiggs replacement. I think they're pretty different players. But like Boucher is more a kind of 6'9", traditional big who stretches the floor to me. Like he's not some kind of perimeter defender or anything like Wiggs is. So you can have Boucher and Melton. Like I don't think we need to have this Chris Boucher over Melton business. I think you can have both. ACS04 says, I want Kuminga back. I feel like Steve Kerr has been using him wrong and trying to mold him into something he's not. If we can find the right role for him, I'm all in him coming back. I'm like, there's so many fans that, and No Cap, you're one of those who just doesn't want Kuminga back under any circumstances. I'm okay with it because I think at this point as well, like the Warriors, if they brought him back, they'd get him at a pretty good deal. Like if the market's just not there for him, like no one really wants him. So the Warriors can name their price basically, and Kuminga's probably going to have to sign it eventually at some point. And then that makes it easier to trade him down the road because the contract's not as big as what you thought it was going to be. So, like, I'm okay with that. Like, and as weird as it sounds, like the upside is still there. And I'm a little bit surprised that there's not more interest, but I think part of that is just like teams don't have cap space whatsoever, and they're not willing to give up what the Warriors want. So therefore, there's no market, which is exactly why I think he's going to come back. And I'm okay with it. As long as he can get on board, which is a big if, right? It's a big if. But even then, like, again, I think if they bring him back at a contract where it's like, it's not steep, it's not at a point where we can't not trade him in, middle of next season, because there's going to be other guys around the league who aren't happy with their situations and the Warriors could try and trade for, and, guys that teams are trying to get rid of. Like that always happens kind of mid-season. I'm okay with bringing Kuminga back. I'm sorry to say, I know a lot of fans just want him desperately gone. I'm fine with it. I'm okay. I'd actually be kind of looking forward. Like if he gets, say, even if he got 18 million a year, and all of a sudden Steve's looking at it thinking, okay, he's actually on 18. And I know coaches shouldn't necessarily do this, but like he would be looking at it thinking he's on 18 million a year. I probably should play him a little bit more consistently. And therefore, like, do we get something more out of Kuminga, right? Does he find that consistent role? I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that. If the increase in salary, the increase in contract forces Kerr's hand a little bit, because there'd be no doubt, like, we know Joe Lacob loves Kuminga, and if Joe Lacob's suddenly paying Kuminga $18 million a year, he's probably looking at Steven and saying, you better bloody play him. So we'll see. Ty says Chris Boucher plays in the defense. What do you mean, Wiggins? All right, I've been up for 55 minutes here. I'm going to finish up the comments here a little bit. One Tony says, kind of just need to sign a $16 million a year contract for 2 years and keep showing his worth. That's in regard to Kuminga. Yeah, like if the Warriors get Kuminga for less than 20, if it's like 16, even 18, I'm okay with. But like if it was 16 for 2 years with a third-year player up, that's a steal to me. Like that's an absolute steal because again, you can trade that. You can easily trade that if it doesn't work out. And if it does work out, I think he's well worth more than $16 million a year. So right now, bring him back. The only downside is it going to ruin chemistry and culture of the team? That's really the only issue to me. Yandel says, would you try to see if they can get Bol? I feel like his culture and his game could help a lot, and his height is incredible. We're getting to that point of the offseason where Bol comes up. You know what? Last roster spot, minimum contract. Why not? I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think like, because you look at his kind of skill set and you look at his physical tools and you think, well, why isn't it working? Why hasn't he done enough? Why is Phoenix moving on from him and multiple other teams moved on from him? It's clearly just like an IQ thing. And then you're going to, his basketball smarts basically. And then what you're going to go and ask him to play in like the most complicated offensive system in the league. I don't think that's going to work. I mean, it sounds like Monty Poole said the Warriors didn't have any interest in Ayton. And I think the Warriors were just like, yeah, we don't want a guy who's, doesn't try, there's question marks over his work ethic and there's question marks over his fit and that kind of thing. So they didn't want to go for Ayton. I can't see them going for Bol. Godzilla says if Kuminga actually has a coach that coaches him, he will get better. You see what he did against Minnesota and after a bunch of DMPs. Yeah, I'm interested. Berserkmark says Otto and GP2 had a really, really healthy season in 22. After that, all went downhill. I'll tell you what, you get Dame or Beal and Melton or something like that, and Horford even at 39. Rick Celebrini is going to have a lot of work on his plate next season. Adding that on top of a 35-year-old Draymond and a 35-year-old Jimmy and a 37-year-old Steph who's going to turn 38 in January or whatever. No Cap says, with as many good free agents left, I'll be livid if GP2 is back or if Gay gets a roster spot and they just add Melton, Horford and bring JK back. That's a fail of an offseason. I don't think... I'd be surprised if GP2 comes back. Gay, like, I'm okay with him being your last roster guy. Like, that's fine. And Melton, Horford, and bringing back Kuminga. So Melton and Horford, if it's just like those two are your key guys, I wouldn't say it's a fail of an offseason. I'd say you haven't done have you done enough to really compete in the West? Maybe not. And if you want to say that as a fail, then you could make the argument. I would say the Warriors are still better as a result of it. Like just adding Horford, I think just makes the Warriors instantly better. How much? Maybe not enough to truly contend for a championship. And then Melton has the upside where that he could make them a lot better. So you could argue that it's a fail because it hasn't got them into contender status necessarily. But would they be a better team? Yes. You're basically replacing, like, who ended the season as the last 5 roster spots? You had Pat Spencer, Braxton Key, Kevin Knox, GP2, Looney, right? So that's 5 guys. If you're getting rid of those 5 guys and you're bringing in Melton and Horford, well, bang, you're already better. Like you just are, even before the other three moves you make. So, Berserkmonk says Kuminga is going to end up just taking the qualifier and then leaving next season unrestricted free agent. I still doubt that. Is he really going to give up that much money? Like, even if he got 3 years, 50. 3 years, 50. Is he going to give up $50 million to take the qualifying offer? And that's a risk again. And he's already taken a risk and lost. So is he going to take another one? Don't know. Yandel says, what do you think about the Cam Thomas situation? I have a weird feeling Nets are going to be the Nets and not sign him. What's his top 3 landing spots? Or does he say future Warrior? Not going to happen, though. Again, too ball dominant for me for him to be. It would be like another Kuminga situation, but worse because he's a bit smaller. He's too ball dominant to me. Yandel says, especially because of the Beal and Lillard rumors. Yeah, I'm taking Beal or Dame over Cam Thomas. One Sonic, I just say give Beal the MLE, sign Melton on a minimum, then trade Buddy or Moody for a center. Okay. JP, offering Buddy and Moody, you'd be lucky you get a center better than Looney. And the picks. I don't know, but I'm not saying Buddy Hield and Moses Moody have a heap of value, but the Warriors have got all their picks, or all their first round picks even. Douglas says, you will see what they do, but to me, it's a no-brainer bringing Gee back on a cheaper deal. Yeah, he's making like $2 million. Like it's less than the minimum, basically. So, yeah. Rico says, bro, you are a cool bloke. Brother, I really like your show. We reside in the Bay Area. My sister is a beautiful Aussie streets. Popsicles are the best. All right. There you go. Thanks for coming in the chat. Appreciate it. Sham says, I don't mind having Kuminga back as long as Kerr don't screw his role. Zertmonk says, kind of ironic that the 4 restricted free agents are all offensive types of players. None of them jump out the defensive end, and none of them have gotten their deal signed. Yeah, interesting. All right, I think I'm going to finish it up. Here, guys. Just having a look through here. No Cap says Horford doesn't play back-to-backs and Melton is injury prone. Muhammad says Buddy Moody 2027 first, 2029 swap for Kobe White and Jalen Smith. I don't hate it. Sham says, what other choice do we have? We rolled our dice on Otto back in 2022, who was more injury prone than Melton. Horford is still better than TJ in post, even at 39. Yeah, I'm all for the Horford Melton signings. I know it's a risk, but the risks are mitigated when you're talking about such cheap contracts. And if you're the Warriors and you think, okay, we're kind of a step below real contender status right now, what's our best chance of getting to contender status? It's taking a risk. It's taking a risk on guys that are a bit injury prone, who could be really impactful for you, but there is some downside with injury, absolutely. But in order to get that upside, you got to take the risk. And I think that's worth it for a team that's not quite in contender status right now based on the current roster. All righty, guys. I know there's a heap more comments here, but I've been going for over an hour, so I'm going to finish it up. Thank you to everyone that's been in the chat. Much appreciated. Really, really appreciate the ongoing support. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. No Cap's not overly happy, I think, with the fact I'm leaving. But you know what? Let's jump back on again. Same time tomorrow. There's got to be some kind of news floating about here in the next 24 hours. So we'll wait and see. No Cap says, hey, do you listen to Light Years? Yeah, absolutely. Not every episode, but a lot of their stuff. So any kind of Warriors content, I'm like you guys. I'm trying to buy in and delve into as much Dubs content as I can. Alrighty, guys. I'm going to finish up. Muhammad says I'm about to watch them now when this show wraps up. Maybe I'll go and do the same. But again, let's do this. Let's do it again. Same time tomorrow, 9 p.m. Pacific time in the Bay Area, I believe. 2 p.m. for any of those of you in Australia. Alrighty, guys. Thanks very much. And hopefully I'll see you in 24 hours time.